You cut yourself, deep, 40,000 years ago. A flint edge slips. It opens the meat of your forearm down to the bone. There's no doctor, no antibiotic, no clean water for 1,000 miles. By every rule of the wild, a wound like this kills you inside a week. Infection, fever, the slow shutdown. You don't die. Tonight, the reason and why it's still inside your body right now. Here's the part that's easy to miss. You already own the most advanced trauma center on Earth. You were born with it. It seals wounds, hunts infection, rebuilds tissue, and turns your fever up and back down again without asking your permission. Your ancestors healed without medicine because, for most of the human story, the healing was never the medicine. 3 things kept that cut on your arm from ending you. You still carry all 3. By the end of this, you'll know what they are. And one of them is something you can do tonight in your own home the next time your body's trying to mend. Stay with me. Start at the fire. Picture the cave. The light is orange and low. Outside, the cold leans against the entrance like a living thing. You're on your side, on the packed dirt, your arm wrapped in soft hide and dried moss, and the wound underneath is doing something quietly miraculous. It's clotting. Within minutes of the cut, platelets in your blood swarm the tear and build a plug. Within hours, white cells arrive to eat the bacteria already trying to colonize the open flesh. Within days, new tissue begins to bridge the gap. None of this requires a thought from you. None of it requires a pharmacy. This is the first thing your ancestors had, and the thing we forget first. A body that, given a fair chance, repairs itself. And it is smarter than you give it credit for. The swelling around the cut, the heat, the redness, the things you reach for a pill to shut down, those aren't the injury. Those are the repair crew arriving. The fever that makes you ache and shiver is your body raising its own temperature on purpose. A furnace lit to cook the things trying to kill you. The exhaustion that flattens you when you're sick is not the sickness winning. It's your body pulling every spare watt off the grid and routing it to the war inside. Every miserable symptom is a tool. Your ancestors never had to understand a word of this for it to work. They only had to let it happen. But given a fair chance is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because the wild does not hand out fair chances. And this is where the story gets stranger than you'd expect, because the ancient human was not simply lying back and trusting the body. The ancient human was reaching for the plants. In 2012, an archaeologist named Karen Hardy, working with the Autonomous University of Barcelona and colleagues at the University of York, published a study in the journal Naturwissenschaften. She and her team had scraped the hardened plaque, the dental calculus, off the teeth of Neanderthals buried at a cave called El Sidrón in northern Spain around 49,000 years ago. Plaque is a time capsule. Whatever you put in your mouth gets trapped in it, and it fossilizes there, sealed, for tens of thousands of years. In that ancient plaque, Hardy's team found chemical traces of yarrow and chamomile. Now hold that for a second. Yarrow and chamomile are bitter. They carry almost no calories. There is no reason to eat them for food, and a strong reason not to. They taste like punishment. Your taste for bitterness exists precisely to keep you away from plants like these, because bitter often means toxic. So why is a Neanderthal fighting for every calorie in an Ice Age winter, chewing a bitter weed with no nutritional payoff? Hardy's answer was the one nobody fully expected. They weren't eating it, they were dosing it. Yarrow is an astringent and a mild anti-inflammatory. Chamomile calms the gut. The simplest reading of that bitter plaque is that a creature we've spent a century calling a brute knew somehow which plants made the body feel better and chose them on purpose. Which raises a question that should keep you here. If they were self-medicating 49,000 years ago, before farming, before writing, before anything we call science, how did they know? You don't get this knowledge from one lucky guess. You get it the long way. You get it from someone generations back who was in pain, who tried a plant, who lived, and who remembered and told. Then somebody told someone else. The knowledge moved through people, mouth to ear, around fire after fire, across a span of time so deep it makes a human lifetime look like a single breath. Think about what that actually required. No writing, no way to record a single word. Every cure had to be carried in living memory and handed down out loud, or it was lost forever. Which means somewhere in your line, again and again, an old person sat a young one down and said, "This one for fever, this one for the gut, not that one. That one stops the heart." A library with no books, kept alive entirely by people who cared enough to remember and to teach. Lose the elders and you lose the medicine. So they kept the elders. And the deeper researchers looked into that plaque, the less it looked like folklore and the more it looked like medicine. In 2017, a team led by Laura Weyrich at the University of Adelaide published a study in Nature. They'd gone back to the Sidrón Neanderthals and sequenced the ancient DNA locked in the plaque, not just the plants, but the microbes, the pathogens, the whole hidden ecosystem of a 49,000-year-old mouth. One individual stood out. This Neanderthal was sick. He had a dental abscess rotting into his jaw, and a stomach bug, a microbe related to the one that gives you food poisoning, churning in his gut. He was in real, grinding pain, and his plaque held two things. The first was poplar. The bark and leaves of the poplar tree contain salicylic acid, the natural compound that we would eventually purify, tweak, and sell to you as aspirin. A man with an abscessed tooth was chewing the original painkiller, tens of thousands of years before the chemists arrived. The second was stranger, and the scientists were more careful about it. His plaque also held traces of penicillium, the mold that, in 1928, would hand Alexander Fleming the first antibiotic. Did he choose it, or did he simply eat it on moldy plants? No one can prove which, but it was there, in the mouth of a sick man, tens of thousands of years before we had a name for it. Sit with the shape of that. A sick Neanderthal with a toothache and an infection, chewing the bark that dulls the pain. The poplar looks deliberate. The mold may have been chance. The people who study him are honest about the line between the two, and even the careful version is remarkable. We didn't invent medicine in a laboratory. We started reaching for it in the dirt and the bark, tens of thousands of years before we wrote a word of it down. So that's your answer, right? Ancient humans healed without medicine because they had medicine. Green, bitter, growing on trees medicine. Case closed. It isn't. And here's where I have to be honest with you, because the comments on a video like this are full of people who actually know this field, and they're right. The pharmacology was real, but it was thin. A poplar twig is not a course of antibiotics. Chamomile does not set a broken bone. A handful of bitter leaves does nothing for a spear wound to the gut, or a leg crushed under a falling animal, or a fever that climbs past the point of no return. For most of what could actually kill you out there, the ancient toolkit had almost nothing. The plants helped at the edges. They eased pain, calmed a stomach, maybe kept a small cut from turning. But they could not reach into the body and save a life that was truly going. The plant medicine was real, and it mattered. And it was nowhere near enough to explain how people survived the injuries we know they survived, because we have the bones. And the bones show people living through things that no twig of willow could ever fix. Keep that in your mind. Survival that the medicine cannot explain. Because the real answer is waiting in a cave in the mountains of Iraq, and it has nothing to do with plants at all. In the 1950s, an archaeologist named Ralph Solecki was digging in Shanidar cave, high in the Zagros Mountains of northern Iraq. Inside, he found the remains of several Neanderthals who had lived and died there tens of thousands of years ago. One of them changed how we think about the whole species. Researchers call him Shanidar 1. The people who study him sometimes call him Nandi. When the anthropologist Eric Trinkhaus later examined the skeleton in detail, work he published in 1983 in the Shanidar Neanderthals, what he found was a catalog of catastrophe. Nandi had taken a massive blow to the left side of his face, hard enough to crush the eye socket. He was very likely blind in that eye. His right arm was withered and useless, possibly broken so badly it was lost above the elbow. He had healed fractures in his foot and leg that would have left him limping in constant pain. Bony growths in his ears suggest he was partially deaf. Now put yourself in that body, in that world. You are half blind, half deaf, one-armed, limping. You cannot hunt. You cannot run from what hunts you. You cannot keep up when the band moves to follow the herds. In the wild, that is a death sentence. An animal that injured would be dead in days. Nandi lived for years that way. The bones prove it, because broken bone only heals if you survive long enough for it to knit. And his injuries were old, remodeled, long mended. He took those wounds, and then he lived for a long time as a man who could do almost nothing for himself. Picture an ordinary morning in that life. The band stirs in the gray light. There's a hunt to plan, ground to cover, and Nandi can't join any of it. He can't grip a spear. He can't see the left half of the world. When the others move out across the cold, he stays behind, useless by every measure the wild understands. And every night they come back. and there is food set aside for the man who caught none of it. Day after day, season after season, year after year. There is only one way that happens. Somebody fed him. Somebody brought him water. Somebody made room for him when the band moved, slowed the pace, shared the kill he could no longer chase. For years, a person who, by the brutal arithmetic of survival, gave nothing back, and they kept him anyway. They chose to. That is the thing the medicine couldn't do. No plant on earth heals a man who can't feed himself. Only other people do that. And this isn't one researcher reading too much into one skeleton. In 2018, the archaeologist Penny Speakins at the University of York published a study in the journal World Archaeology, looking across the whole record of Neanderthal injuries and asking a simple question: was this care or was it cold calculation? Her conclusion, drawn from case after case of survived impossible injuries, was that Neanderthals were giving real, sustained, skilled healthcare to people who could offer nothing in return, and doing it not as a strategy, but because they were moved to. So here is the turn this whole video has been walking toward. The first medicine was not a plant. The first medicine was a person who stayed. Your body has always been able to mend itself, but mending takes time. Days of fever, weeks for bone. And in the wild, time is the one thing a wounded animal never gets. Because the world doesn't pause while you heal. What humans invented wasn't a drug. It was a way to buy each other time. A circle of people who would hold the dark back, carry the water, and keep watch over your unconscious body while your own blood and bone did the quiet work of repair. Which leaves one last question, and it's a sharp one. If they would care for the half-blind and the one-armed, how far would they actually go? Would they cut into a living skull to save someone? They would. Move forward in time to the Neolithic, the age when humans were first settling into villages and turning soil into farms, and start finding the skulls. All across Europe going back as far as 7,000 years, archaeologists keep digging up human skulls with neat holes cut into them. Not from violence, not from a blow, from a tool worked carefully through the bone, around the edges of a deliberate opening. The practice is called trephination. One of the oldest clear cases comes from a grave at Insisheim in France, dated to roughly 5000 BC. Someone with stone tools in a world with no anesthetic opened a living person's skull on purpose. Stay in that room for a moment. The patient is awake. There is nothing to make them otherwise. Someone is scraping slowly through the layers of the skull while others hold the body still and steady the head. It would have taken a long time. It would have taken nerve and a strangely steady hand and a shared belief that the person on the ground was worth this much effort and this much risk. This is not panic. This is a procedure performed by people who had done it before. We don't fully know why, maybe to relieve pressure after a head injury, maybe to treat seizures or crushing headaches. But here's the detail that matters, the one that should stop you. Look at the edge of the hole. In case after case, the bone around the opening has grown back. Smoothed over, remodeled, healed. Bone only heals if you're alive. A healed rim means the patient lived through the surgery and then lived for months, years after it, which means it wasn't a desperate accident. It worked often enough that people kept doing it for thousands of years across continents that had never met. Someone held that person still. Someone tended the wound after. Someone believed it was worth trying to save a life the world would otherwise have let go. Now pull all the way back and look at the species, the whole sweep of us. This is what we are, not the apex predator. There were faster, stronger, deadlier animals all around us, animals that could outrun us and outbite us and outlast us in almost every contest the body can have. What we are is the animal that refused to let its wounded die alone, the one that built out of nothing but attention and willingness, a kind of safety no other creature on the planet has ever had. We outsurvived everything, not because we were tougher, but because when one of us went down, the others knelt in the dirt and stayed. That instinct didn't disappear. It's still in you. You feel it every time you can't quite walk past someone crying on the street, every time you bring soup to a sick friend without being asked, every time you stay on the phone too long with someone falling apart because hanging up feels impossible, every time something in your chest pulls hard toward a person in pain and won't let you look away. That pull is older than language. It is older than fire. It is the oldest medicine there is, and you were born already carrying it. But somewhere along the way, you were taught to be ashamed of needing it. Here's the part I most want you to hear. When you're sick and the only thing your body wants is to crawl into the dark and rest, that's not weakness. When you're hurt and some quiet instinct tells you to stop, to slow down, to let someone take care of you, that's not laziness, and it's not you failing to push through. That is a 40,000-year-old healing program, firing exactly the way it was built to fire. The withdrawal, the heaviness, the need for tending, that's the ancient body trying to do what it has always done. Stop, recruit, recover. You're not broken. You're running healing software written for a world that lets you obey it. The modern world just trained you to override it, to answer the messages with a fever, to power through on the day you should have stopped, to heal alone, to treat needing people as something to apologize for. None of that makes the old program wrong. It just makes it harder to hear over everything telling you to keep going. So here's the thing to run tonight. The next time you're sick or hurting or wrung out, don't do it in silence. Tell one person, just one. Say the small, hard sentence. I'm not okay. Can you bring me something? Let them carry the water. It will feel like an imposition. It will feel like you're being a burden, like you should be able to handle it alone. Notice that feeling and then do it anyway, because that feeling is the lie modern life taught you. You'd do it for them without a second thought. You'd show up, you'd bring the soup, you'd sit with them. That same instinct exists in the people who care about you, and refusing to let them use it doesn't make you strong. It just leaves you alone in the dark with a body that was built to heal in company. And this isn't only kindness. Being tended to, being held inside someone's care, measurably calms the body's stress response and helps it do the work of repair. The circle around the fire was never a luxury. It was part of the treatment. When you let someone in, you're not being weak. You're completing the oldest medicine there is. Your ancestors survived a world that should have killed them, not because they were strong, but because they were never at the worst moments alone. You were never meant to heal alone. You still aren't. If this stayed with you, stay a little longer by the fire. There's another story waiting, and I think you'll want to hear it.